you have this opinion, which is known as case law here in Canada, which is a story about a guy that met a gal online on a dating app, took her out on a date, and TLDR version of it is he's now going to prison, or he's facing jail time for what happened. So can you walk the audience through this story and what the cautionary tale is with that before we get into, family law and divorce law and what's happening, in the future?
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you, Rich, for the introduction. Basically, there was a case in Pennsylvania, unpublished opinion that came out in Pennsylvania Superior Court, December 30th, 2022, Commonwealth versus Wilton. And you could just Google Pennsylvania Superior Court, or maybe Rich will put the link in the show notes. Long story short, a guy goes on a dating app and he matches with a woman, and they decide to meet at a restaurant bar, and they're talking to each other for a couple hours. They're kissing each other. They're talking about very intimate subjects, what kind of intimacy they like. She's showing him pictures of her most private areas on her cell phone. And after about a couple of hours of hanging out at the bar, she invites him into her SUV, where he pulls down his pants. And the rest is a he said, she said. The cautionary tale here is she claims that he assaulted her and that he somehow forced her to perform sex acts on him or do things that she didn't agree to. And his side of the story is different than hers. So it's a real cautionary tale that you better be very careful if you're a man out there, especially if you don't have a lot of experience and you don't know the other person. So this guy goes out on maybe a Tinder date. I don't know what the dating app was. It doesn't say in the opinion. And the next thing you know, he's charged with multiple sex crimes. He gets convicted and he loses his appeal. So he'll be in state prison for at least 2.5 years. His sentence was 2.5 to 5 years. Then he has 5 years of probation after that.
What do you think the motivation was? Like, why would she do something like this?
You never know. What she may have tried to extort money from him and say, look, if you don't pay me. She was convicted of welfare fraud years before. So they were able to get that conviction in evidence as a crimen falsi crime. She was not honest, and she was convicted of being dishonest, and he still got convicted. So just a word to the wise. If you're a guy out there, be very, very careful. He invited her to a hotel room and she declined. That should have been his first sign that, she's not into this right now and she's not into him. And then why would she invite him into her SUV? Why did he follow her in there? There's a lot of unanswered questions, but the problem I have with it is he probably should have thought this through a little more closely before getting undressed in her car or pulling his pants down, which is what was in the opinion that he did. So I just wanted to bring that up front to your audience, bring it to their attention, because I don't want to see anybody get into that.
Yeah. So I want to ask you a couple questions around this, because there's a lot of characters in the Mano Swamp that sell pickup artistry courses. And one of the angles that they tend to use is an acronym SNL, which stands for Same Night Lay. So clearly this guy was making advances on this gal, but she reciprocated. She's egging him on, showing him pictures of her nude body. She invites him into the SUV, and then it kind of escalated from there. And then she obviously had buyer's remorse the next day, and then, bad man over there made me do bad things. I want, legal help, help me, please.
Right.
Do you have any advice for guys on maybe spotting these sirens, these crazies that might potentially complicate a guy's life? This is I mean, I'm sure he didn't Google her first and last name plus welfare fraud, plus case law in the state to see if anything would come up. Most guys wouldn't think about that. But is there any advice that you might have for guys to sort of screen out these nutters?
First piece of advice, and I gave this to, let me just preface this. I'm not your lawyer if you're watching this. It's not, quote, legal advice, but I would say this. Be very careful, first of all, if anyone's intoxicated, because then they can't give you consent, like if they're passed out.
Mm-hmm.
So if he was plowing her with drinks, or I tell the high school kids years ago when I used to talk to them, if someone's passed out, make sure they're okay. Get them help. Make sure they're not, over the limit where they could be in danger, in serious danger. But don't do anything with them. That's terrible. You're going to get yourself into a ton of trouble.
At what point does the legal system consider somebody intoxicated generally, where they wouldn't be able to make a rational choice about inviting a guy into their SUV and then inviting a guy to take off his pants and then escalating it from there? Like, where's the line in the sand where it's like, oh, well, she was kind of drooling and half asleep, so she was clearly, intoxicated, versus, well, she was clearly walking nice and straight in a straight line from the bar to the car and had one drink. Like, how do you distinguish that?
Yeah, as a guy, I would clearly, if it were me, I would be on the clear side, err on the side of caution, and you want them to be sober. You don't want you want a woman to show genuine burning desire for you, or nothing, or forget it. Like if she said, you know what, let's take a shower together, let's take a bath together. She's completely sober, hasn't been drinking, there's no signs of intoxication. You want her to have all of her wits about her. You don't want her even in that gray area. Why put yourself in that position? I wouldn't. I don't care how thirsty you are. Don't do it. It's not worth it, because cases like this come about. It becomes a he said, she said. Make sure consent is clear and they are of clear, sound mind. Don't take a chance where somebody can come back later and said, I was intoxicated, or I passed out, or you don't want to deal with that kind of stuff.
Have you seen anything as far as opinions or maybe case law that makes any recommendations as far as guys, protecting themselves, or like what can guys get away with? So I've heard stories of guys using things like nanny cams in their house to record consent without them actually, knowing that they're being recorded. Like, where does the law stand on something like that? Because, if she turns around the next day and says, well, he raped me and I didn't consent, and this is completely offside, and I didn't want this to happen, but he has video evidence of her initiating the entire process. Like, how does the law look at something like that? Is that something that guys can use to protect themselves?
Not really. You got to be careful, because in some jurisdictions, it's illegal to record somebody unless both parties know they're being recorded. In other jurisdictions, just one party. So it can change from jurisdiction to jurisdiction. You would need somebody's permission. So you don't want to find yourself on the wrong side of the law, depending upon what the law is. There are guys who have hidden cameras and nanny cameras hidden in stuffed animals or hidden in a closet somewhere with a hole in the wall. You better not do that if you're not allowed to in your jurisdiction. You'll get in a heap of trouble. So there's no easy answer. I would say really vet the person very carefully. This same night lay, or whatever the acronym was, you're asking for it. You really need to be careful.
I've said to guys many times, I'm like, use your first date as a sniff test, have a drink, just take an hour out of your day, have a drink, go for a walk, grab a coffee, sort of thing, sniff her out, see what she's all about. But if you're going to follow the advice of some of these, nefarious cuckoos that are telling you to like roll around with every chick you possibly can within 20 minutes of meeting them, you're eventually going to smash into something like this, which is going to cause problems for you. I mean, a woman of higher character isn't going to be showing you nude pictures of herself in a bar. A woman of higher character is not going to invite you in a car and invite you to take off your clothes that early on. I mean, it can wait. Like, why can't it wait, for you to have like a second or third date and say, hey, come over to my place, let's go over to your place, sort of thing. You can make things happen there and then if you want. At least you have a little more time to sort of size her up to see what she's made of. But I don't think guys are giving themselves enough time and just rushing into this headstrong. It seems like it's probably. Is this the first time you've seen this, or does this pop up a lot for you?
I've seen it a couple of other times, and I hate to see these cases where it comes down to a he said, she said.
Because it's always whatever she said goes now, right?
Well,
Me too.
he said she touched his genitals, and she said, no, he forced me onto his genitals as he was sitting in the passenger seat of the car.
Mm.
You know, to convict somebody of that, and there's such a diverse rendition of what happened. I wasn't at the trial, but she could, she had a lot of other emotional issues. She sobbed during the trial, which was another problem for his case, because there was a problem with the jury instructions around that. I'm thinking to myself, man, if you just used a little bit more common sense and were a little more discerning around how you went about this. I don't know how old the guy was, but he had to be the age of majority to be tried in an adult court, not as a juvenile. So let's say he was in his 20s or 30s.
Mm-hmm.
Are you really that thirsty to have someone that you don't know, have a sexual encounter with you in a car?
I really hope you guys enjoyed that clip. If you want to watch the full-length podcast, you can find that over here, that clip's from. If you're newer to the channel, make sure you hit subscribe over here, and pin down below in the top comment, you'll find a bunch of useful links to my website, my supplement line, books, and a bunch of other stuff. Have an amazing day. Peace out.